Assalamu alaikum. I'd like to welcome you all to today's session with Boston Islamic Seminary. Today's session is called Fiqh for Today, Balancing Tradition with Maqasid al-Sharia. Our special guest speaker is Dr. Suheil Laher. He is currently one of Boston Islamic Seminary's scholars. He has an MA in Religious Studies from Boston University and a PhD in Arabic and Islamic Studies from Harvard University. He previously served as the academic dean of Fawaqih Institute, which teaches classical Arabic. He's currently serves as an associate professor and lead faculty at BIS. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome Dr. Suheil.
Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah. So, thank you, Sister Dalia. So, who thinks we need an Islamic reformation? Anyone? Couple of hands. Don't be shy. Okay, only a few people. Who thinks we need an Islamic renewal? Renewal. Okay, a few more people. Does Quran or Hadith tell us anything about either of these? Yes. There is Hadith in Sunan Abi Dawood, where the Prophet ﷺ said, Inna Allaha yab'athu ala kulli ra'si mi'ati sana man yujaddidu lahum dinahum, aw kama qala. That Allah will send every century someone who will renew the religion for the Muslims. Renew, tajdeed, mujaddid. So, why might we need renewal? Why might we need reformation? I think reformation is not completely off the table, but depending on what you mean by that. And hopefully what I'm going to cover in my talk sheds some light on that. But why might we need change? One reason is that so much around us has changed. Socially, politically, economically. The concept of the nation state was not there for much of the pre-modern history of Islam. So how do we continue to apply Islam? How do we continue to remain faithful to the Islamic beliefs and values while continuing to make Islam relevant to today? Hopefully what I'm going to tell you in the next 25 minutes will shed some light on that. Another hadith reported by al-Bayhaqi, the Prophet ﷺ said, يحمل هذا العلم من كل خلف عدوله. ينفون عنه تحريف الغالين وانتحال المبطلين وتأويل الجاهلين أو كما قال. Yes, there's some disagreement over the authenticity of this hadith, but many scholars considered it to be sahih. And we are told the Prophet ﷺ said that this knowledge, which knowledge? Knowledge of Islam, knowledge of the deen, will be carried by the righteous people, udul, upright people of each generation, and they will defend it against the distortions of the extremists and the claims of the liars, the impudent liars, and the false interpretations or mistaken interpretations of the ignorance. So, three things here. Extremists, ignorant people, and liars. And if we survey the Islamic landscapes today, I'm sure we can find examples of all three of these. Okay, so let's dive into the kind of meat and potatoes of my lecture, for those who know this expression. Maqasid. Maqasid is an Arabic word meaning intents, objectives. Maqasid al-Sharia, the higher objectives of the Sharia, higher objectives of Islamic law. The study of the deeper intents and the wisdom that underpin the sacred law of Sharia. But let's take a step back. Does the sacred law have underlying wisdom or higher intents that Allah intended? The vast majority of scholars agreed that yes. Because if you consider the possibilities, either Allah merely commanded us to do certain things and prohibited us from other things by fiat, arbitrarily, merely to test our devotion and our obedience. That is one hypothetical possibility. In other words, if Allah had commanded us to murder, murder would have been considered good. So I guess most people would not be willing to accept things like that, and that includes most of the scholars. So if it is not merely by fiat, then should be either for some purpose or for no purpose. Would Allah command something for no purpose? No, because there are verses in the Quran that tell us that Allah is al-Hakim, the wise. So it is for some purpose, but what is that purpose? Again, there are some hypothetical possibilities. Either there is benefit in it for Allah. We can rule out this possibility because Inna Allah laghaniyyun 'anil 'alamin. Allah has no need of anything or anyone in the entire universe. What then? It could be for some benefit to creation, either human beings or other creations. And if you think about it, this is the only remaining possibility. So yes, Allah has commanded us to do certain things and prohibited us from other things because there is benefit in it, either for us personally or potentially for the environment, for the animals, and so on. So there are higher intents, higher objectives of the Sharia. What are these? Is there a verse in the Quran or hadith that says the higher objectives of Sharia are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6? Is there? No. So the Muslim scholars grappled with this question from way back. The first scholar we know of who came up with a list is Imam al-Juwayni, famous Shafi scholar of Fiqh and Usul, who died 478 Hijri, 5th century Hijri, which is, you can do the conversion for the Gregorian. And essentially what Juwayni and other scholars like him did is to try to look at the bigger picture, step back and look at the Sharia as a whole, all the regulations, and to try to figure out what this is all trying to achieve. And when they did that, they concluded that there are 5 of these higher objectives, which every regulation in the Sharia is about establishing or preserving one or more of these 5 things. What are these 5 things? Number 1, ad-din, religion. Number 2, life and nafs. Religion, Islam, came to, number 1, teach people to worship Allah and to prepare for meeting Allah after death. But while people are on this earth, they have to conduct their lives in a way which is good and right, and that includes, for example, not killing one another, not committing murder. So there are many regulations in the Sharia which serve to preserve and protect human life. And actually, we could say not just human life, but also all life, animal life as well. It is not allowed to kill even a bird without reason. So religion, life, we have 3 more. An-nasl or an-nasab, lineage or family structure. Number 4, al-aql, intellect. And number 5, al-mal, property, money, wealth. So the Sharia, Imam al-Juwayni and other scholars concluded, is all about establishing and preserving religion. including spirituality, life, family structure, intellect, and property. And when we confront these modern issues, it is often this list of 5 higher objectives that the scholars go back to when there's no clear text of the Quran or Hadith to address this new issue. So, before I mention some specific examples, a note of caution. This concept of Maqasid is a powerful concept, and it often helps us to keep priorities in mind. But there is a danger. Actually, there are 2 dangers. One danger from not applying this concept, not keeping in mind the bigger picture, and instead being overly literal, losing sight of the spirit of Islam. That is one extreme. And that is dangerous. Because Islam, the form of Islam which results might, and probably in most cases, will be out of touch with the needs of people. But the other extreme is also dangerous. And that extreme is over-application of this concept. So one example, there are people who say that the higher objective of religion is to make people better, to make people behave well. So if we can get people to do good and behave well without believing in God, then we don't need the belief in God and belief in the hereafter. Of course, this is totally unacceptable from an Islamic point of view. This is actually the most important thing in life. وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. Allah created human beings and jinn only in order for them to worship Him. So if you try to eliminate this ubudiyya element of religion, you will be lost in this world and in the hereafter. So that is an example of over-application of higher objectives. Okay, last half of my talk, I will mention some issues, specific issues, modern issues, and we can divide these issues into 3 categories. Category 1 is clear-cut issues which are non-negotiable. So even if we are talking about reform or revival, islah or tajdeed, or whatever word you use, What is important is not the word, what is important is the methodology and the concept behind it. So whether it is reformation or revival, if we are to remain true to our Islamic values, to the Quran and Sunnah, then there are some things which are off limits, which we cannot change. For example, the beliefs. Belief in Allah, belief in the hereafter, Jannah and Jahannam, belief in the prophets, the books, angels, and so on. Then also some fundamental practices, the pillars of Islam like Salah, fasting, Hajj, Zakat, and so on. And thirdly, some fundamental moral teachings which are clear-cut in the Quran and Sunnah, like the prohibition of murder, prohibition of lying, prohibition of adultery, and so on. If we try to reinterpret things in this category, then we will fall into shirk. This is the shirk which is referred to in the hadith of Adi ibn Hatim, where he asked the Prophet ﷺ about the verse of the Quran that the Jews and the Christians have taken their scholars as lords besides Allah. And Adi asked that they do not worship their holy men, but the Prophet ﷺ said, yes, they do not actually worship them, but these scholars made lawful for them what Allah had prohibited, and they prohibited what Allah had made lawful, and the people knowingly followed them in this, and this is tantamount to worship. So this is category number one. Category number two are totally new issues which the Quran and Sunnah do not address at all. For example, voting in the US, for example, organ transplantation, pronouns, right? Should we use pronouns of choice of the person, right? The person is unambiguously male but wants to be referred to by female pronouns, is this Islamically allowed? The vast majority of Muslim scholars are of the view that if you are unambiguously male, then your pronouns should be male, right? So Islamically, at least according to the majority of scholars, even if someone underwent gender change surgery and they are outwardly a woman, they are Islamically still a man, and by default we would use male pronouns for them. But as I said, Maqasid is about priorities and weighing the benefits and harms. So if it would cause preponderant harm to you, the Muslim, or others around you, to misgender someone, as they call it, then there's scope, right? For example, you might lose your job if you refuse to use these pronouns. Then, in this case, this is a type of necessity which would dictate an exception, and you would be allowed to use the person's pronouns of choice. How about organ transplantation? Of course, this did not exist until very recently, so the pre-modern fuqaha did not address it. But the modern fuqaha, when they grappled with this issue, they found that there are some related issues which the pre-modern fuqaha did talk about. For example, if there are people trapped in a cave, anyone in here who is a lawyer or in law school? No one? Okay. Okay, that's fine. I won't mention what I was about to mention. But yeah, if there are people trapped in a cave and they know they have run out of food and they know they will die unless they kill one of themselves and eat his flesh. Is this allowed? What do you think? No, it's not. Islamically, it's not allowed. Actually, there was 1949, I won't mention it anyway, article in Harvard Law Review, the case of the Spelunkian explorers, which was about this hypothetical scenario. And these people did that. They killed one of themselves and they ate his flesh in order to survive. And when they were eventually rescued, they were put on trial and they were found guilty of murder. So Islamically, that is not allowed either, but let's consider a variation. Instead of killing him, what if they chop off his arm and then cook it and they all eat from it? Could this be allowed? Potentially. Some of the fuqaha of the past discussed this and they said potentially that could be legitimate, particularly if one of the people is a convicted murderer who deserves to die anyway. All right? Okay. Okay, I'll wrap up in the next 5 minutes. Is that okay? Okay, so I was talking about organ transplantation. So yeah, one thing we should realize and be cognizant of and appreciate is the sophistication and breadth and depth of our Islamic scholarly tradition. Even some Muslims fail to appreciate this, and they may be well-intentioned and seeking to make Islam relevant and embark on an agenda of reform or revival, but they are disconnected from the tradition. And so they fail to do justice to the tradition, and the tradition, of course, is based on the Quran and Sunnah. So if you fail to do justice to the scholarly tradition, you are failing to do justice to the Quran and Sunnah. So the contemporary scholars are pretty much agreed that organ transplantation based on scenarios which were discussed by the scholars of the past, as well as in the light of the higher intents, the Maqasid of Sharia. Here you are talking particularly about the preservation of life. Organ transplantation is permissible, provided that the organ comes from someone with his or her consent, and the person donates the organ and does not sell it. Okay, a couple of other scenarios in the remaining 2 minutes. Voting, I guess this is, we could talk for the entire 13 minutes just about voting, but yeah, voting is also about weighing the benefits and harms, and of course this is a hot issue right now. What would be the benefits and harms of voting for Biden as opposed to someone else? So yeah, I said 3 categories. Clear-cut issues which are non-negotiable, new issues like organ transplantation, and thirdly, old issues in a new context. This we could subdivide into things which most scholars would not disagree about. For example, the Quran mentions jilbab, jalabibihin. Does this mean a woman has to wear a jilbab? Or can she wear any other style of clothes, provided it is loose and covers the required parts of the body, for example, a loose skirt and top? Yes, many scholars today agreed that it is not specifically the jilbab, but any clothing items which fulfill the same role as the jilbab. So that is an example of a non-controversial issue. An example of a issue which is somewhat controversial. There are respected scholars on both sides. If a woman converts to Islam, but the husband does not, by default, according to most of the scholars of the past, they would say she has to, her marriage is terminated and she has to separate from her husband. But there are some contemporary scholars, Sheikh Qaradawi and others, who have revisited this issue and come up with a different conclusion. In short, that there are some details, but in short, that she does not have to leave her husband. So again, even if you're not comfortable with this fatwa, from the point of view of priorities, of course, it is more of a priority for this woman to accept Islam, even if she is not willing to leave her husband. So even if you've of the belief that it is haram for her to stay with her non-Muslim husband, even then, it is more of a priority that she takes the Shahada. We can turn a blind eye to her remaining with her husband for the time being. And of course, there's the fatwas, Sheikh Qaradawi and others, which allows her to stay with her husband. So, in conclusion, yes, there is room for whatever you call it, reformation, revival, but this needs to be undertaken by qualified scholars who are conversant with the depth, breadth, and sophistication of the tradition, and also have piety. And for the layman, you should approach fiqh issues with your conscience. If there's a fatwa that makes you uncomfortable, by default, my advice would be not to follow that fatwa until and unless you research further and figure out whether it is really something which is clear-cut in the Quran or Sunnah, or it is something on which the scholars have disagreed and it's not clear-cut in the Quran and Sunnah. Okay, I'm done. Finally, Boston Islamic Seminary, we have a table outside. We offer a 3-year degree in Islamic religious leadership. And we also, we are trying to train Muslim leaders who have connection to the tradition and are also well grounded in the contemporary context and have the skills which are needed in the West today. We also offer other courses, even if you're not a leader. We have courses coming up in the spring. There are cards on the table outside with details, and I'll stop here. Thank you.
I'll bring over the mic as well. Jazakallah khair, Dr. Suheil, that was amazing. It's such an important topic with these modern days, as you mentioned in your talk. We only have time for one comment or question. I will ask this question one question was asked, what do you do if something is explicitly not haram in the Quran? But obviously, I think you explained that. But when we need to get the advice regarding something that's halal or haram, who can we go to? Do we go to our local imam? Do we have to go somewhere higher? Where can we go to?
Okay. The general rule is that you ask someone whose knowledge, Islamic knowledge and piety you trust, regardless of what madhab or methodology he follows. Usually, if you trust the imam, for most people, they trust the imam of their masjid, so most people would ask the imam of the masjid. Only if your conscience is uncomfortable with the fatwa he gives you, then you may need to go further.
And then the last question we'll ask today is, what is the fiqh of human rights? Is there a fiqh about human rights? Or is there a fiqh about, say, for example, dealing with the LGBTQ community? And where do we draw the line in terms of protecting their human rights and dealing with them as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yes, in terms of basic human rights, yes, we support basic human rights for all human beings, including LGBTQIA+. So yes, we disagree with some of their behaviors and lifestyle. We believe that some of these actions they are doing are haram. That is non-negotiable. But we don't believe that just because they are doing these things that other people have a right to kill them or to attack them and so on. They have basic human rights to live, work, human dignity, and so on. Of course, this is a huge topic, and this aspects of this topic have been addressed by some of the scholarly councils. So there are regional, national, and international fiqh councils. For example, AMJA, Assembly of Muslim Jurists of America. Actually, earlier this year, I co-presented a paper on transgender issues, the fiqh, and how Muslims should deal with this. There's also Fiqh Council of North America, headed by Sheikh Yasir Qadi, European Council for Fiqh and Research, and there are others in the Muslim world, the Majma' Fiqhi of Muslim World League, the OIC, Organization of Islamic Cooperation. They have Majma' Fiqhi also.